Welcome back, listeners, to the Nice to Meet You podcast. This is your host, your girl, Lynette, and this is season 2, episode 13. And today I have a double treat, a double treat for you all, as I will be speaking with Tony of the Mud Talk podcast and Desmond of the Independent Thought podcast. So we're hitting you with 2 hitters today. Both guys are friends of the Nice to Meet You podcast, and they already know they got an open invitation anytime to come by and just speak to you all. The Mud Talk podcast is about fashion, sports, life, and culture. And Tony is always simply just speaking from the heart and sharing his story with the listeners. And then we got Independent Thought. The Independent Thought podcast is typically about politics and things that are going on in the news. But lately, Desmond has spiced it up a little bit, and he's been talking about topics about life, racism, and many other things. So join in with me and re-welcoming Tony and Desmond to the Nice to Meet You podcast. Thank you guys for taking time out of your day to speak with us.
Thank you for having us on.
No problem.
Definitely happy to be here.
All right, guys. So you all know, listeners, how I feel about basketball with sports, period. But basketball has a special place in my heart. So we want to take a little time to just kind of talk about that, sports and the Black community and our spending and all those 2 topics. So there's a guy named Charles Farrell. He's a director of the Rainbow Coalition for Fairness in Athletics. And he's quoted in saying that athletics is to the Black community what technology is to the Japanese and what oil is to the Arabs. We're allowing that commodity to be exploited. We really need to turn it around. If those schools cannot do for us what we need done, i.e. provide an education for the next generation, then we should be looking to steer clear of those situations. Essentially, what Charles is saying is that he feels that schools are responsible for the low graduation rate in African-American athletes. Do you agree with this quote? And what has the meaning of sports been to the Black community? And anyone can go first.
Yeah. Now, when you're saying the graduation rate, is this college? We're talking about college?
This is college sports.
And they're based on what he's saying, he's blaming the colleges.
Yeah, he's saying that they're exploiting the Black athletes, like as you know, they're exploiting because like the basketball and football is majority Black, and so the Black athletes, they go one and done, things like that, and then they end up not graduating. So do you feel like sports plays a role in that?
I just think it's a system. You know what I'm saying? I think it's more so the system because, like, as an athlete, when you're coming into a college, especially a Division I university, as a basketball player, I mean, the goal is to play 1 year and go to the NBA. Just because the way the NBA system is set up, like if you play 3 or 4 years, your stock is going to plummet. Like, so you're not going to be a first round pick in most occasions. So like, when it comes to basketball, it's a little different, versus football. Like football, you can play 4 years, right? You can get that degree and still be a first round pick in the NFL. I don't think that they're looking at your potential in the NFL because, they say it stands for not for long, right? So if you come in, they're expecting you to produce as a rookie. Mm-hmm. Versus the NBA where they give you a little bit more grace, right? If you come in as a 20-year-old kid, they're like, he'll be good by the time he's 23, 24, right? So I think for basketball, yes, it's definitely, it has a lot to do with that, why kids don't graduate. Because, if you go first round, most kids don't go back and get that degree, I would imagine. But like with football, if you leave after your junior year, you may be more inclined to go back, especially with the way the NFL is set up. So I think it's different. You can't. Both situations aren't the same. The NBA is a little different than the NFL, but definitely with basketball. Definitely with basketball. Because if you go in as a freshman, like you want to put on so that you can leave. And if you do come back for a sophomore season, like you want to get out of there in at least 1 or 2 years. Football's a lot different.
But what do you think, like, so the Black community, so you think like, okay, so most of the athletes are coming out of like tough backgrounds. And so they're just trying to get a payday. Like they're trying to take care of their mom, their dad, their granny, their aunt, their cousins. And so do you feel like this plays a part in like in the Black community? Like, what does sports mean? I feel like to me, sports means in the Black community a way to get out, a way to better yourself, a way to prepare your family. Would you agree with that?
I definitely would. I think maybe not as much today. I mean, I think, we're getting better as a community. Like we're teaching our kids different things. At least I can speak for myself and my wife and our kids. And we were raised. My wife was adopted. You know my story. Like I was, raised in a single parent home. We've had our set of challenges, but now we focus so much on education for our children, and that being the center of their way out. But also educating them on financial literacy and entrepreneurship and those things, so that they don't think that sports is the only way out. Like when I came up, yes,
Hmm.
it was sports of the block. That was the two things that was presented to us. And if you
Hmm.
didn't do one of those two things, then you didn't feel like you had a chance. But I think now there's more chances available for kids. There's more opportunity. I think we need to take responsibility, as a community, to make sure that we're pouring into the youth, to let them know that they have those opportunities. That's a part of my mission, honestly, because I think we're definitely falling short on that front.
Yeah. What about you, Desmond?
Um, the schools, if we're just gonna be honest about it, the schools, rob these kids. I mean, just gonna
Yeah.
call it what it is. I mean, just it's doing some real like. I try to think about this topic a couple years ago, and I tried to do like a little just basic math on it because the argument that the schools have is that we're giving them the scholarship to get a degree, and that should be good enough for the fact that we don't pay them any money, right?
Hmm.
And my whole thing is that, even taking out the kids that don't, I mean, that do graduate, just putting them into the equation really quick. If you just focused on them, not even focus on all the kids who don't graduate, which is like 60% or more at a lot of these, universities. Just with the kids that do graduate, I mean, you're talking like a football team. I mean, that might be like 20 kids, and over the course of their entire lifetime, they might make $15 million. Because when you make like the average lifetime income for a person with a PhD is like $1 million, like a
Okay.
lifetime. Okay, and so if they were all doctors, then they would make maybe 20 million in their whole life. Some of these schools are making 20 million in 1 year off TV deals.
Yeah.
So the balance of how much money these schools are making off these athletes versus what the athletes are getting in return, and that's just from the kids who do graduate, the scale is so uneven, it don't make no sense in my mind. I mean, the universities are exploiting these people. They're exploiting all these kids. Most of them are black.
Yeah.
And so the fact that they're trying to get away with this whole idea that, oh, we shouldn't have to pay them, that's absolute nonsense in my opinion. I mean, I'm glad that there's some movement happening on it, but it wasn't soon enough, and it's not good enough. Even what they're saying, what they're gonna do now, which is like just letting them like make money off their name and likeness, which that should have been done the whole time. The fact that they weren't doing that just shows some real ownership mentality that these people have.
So let me throw some stats out for you because I did my homework. Desmond, I know you know about stats and research. So, according to murphy.senate.gov, the NCAA makes an average per year of about $1 billion, with over 31 million being from football and over 8 million for men's basketball and over 2 million for women's basketball. Okay, so like I said, we know that most of the pro athletes in basketball and football are African American players, and that the owners are not only profiting off these players in the major league, but also in college sports too. So, and then the fact that in high school, you can't just go from straight. You used to be able to go straight from the high school to the NBA, but now you gotta either go to college for 1 year, or you have to be 1 year removed from high school and at least 19 years old to go to the NBA draft. And in the NFL, you cannot go straight from high school. You have to be at least 3 years removed from high school. So do you think these rules are fair? And what are your thoughts? So this is like Tony, I'll ask you first since you have kids. What are your thoughts on your children being college athletes with knowing all these stats that I just gave you?
Yeah, of course. I would be lying if I would sit here and say that I don't want them to be college athletes, like on scholarship, right? But I do, like you say, like the numbers are the numbers. Unfortunately, even if my son isn't a McDonald's All-American, and he doesn't go to a top university, that school is still making money off of basketball. Basketball and football generate the most money for the school, and then they take that money and fund the rest of the sports at the school, which is something else that's done with that money as well. So you have kids coming in on scholarships for lacrosse, right? That a sport that doesn't generate revenue for the university, and they get a scholarship just like my kid, but
Yeah.
my kid's playing the sport that generates all the money, and he doesn't get any money for it. So yeah, I'm with you. It does make you a little uneasy, because like Desmond says, they're getting used, essentially, because the education isn't enough, and that doesn't guarantee my kid financial stability outside of playing collegiate sports, because they may not go pro, right? So they need some kind of guarantee. But I like what the G League is doing. I like what the G League is doing. They're starting to make it to where these kids have a choice now, right? To go
Mm-hmm.
make 130 grand, whatever it is, for one season instead of going to college. And
Mm-hmm.
it's giving them some insurance and some stability. So I definitely want my kids to take, to go and get a free education, if sports can take them there. But to be real, like if my son or my daughter is in a position to choose between going to school and, maybe going to like a G League and making, six figures, while they're preparing to go professional, I wouldn't be mad if they took that option, because you can always, finance your way through college once you get your money and come back to that.
Well, if they decided to go to college and they wanted to leave, like, would you be the type of parent to say, like, I want you to stay. I want you to get your degree first. Like the NBA can wait, or the WNBA could wait.
Man, I would definitely want them to follow their dreams. Like, to be real, I can't. I know that myself and my wife included, who has a couple college degrees, would definitely want them to pursue their education and to finish what they started. I think we will have to come up with some kind of commitment, right? Like some kind of promise, a handshake or something, where they would promise to go back and get their degree
Mhm.
after pursuing, their professional careers. And knowing our kids, I would hope that they would hold up their end of the bargain. So we see a lot of players do that. I don't think we talk about that enough. A lot of kids do go back in the NBA and get their degrees while they're playing basketball. So I think that's always an option.
Yeah, I think Steph Curry did it. Did Shaq do it? I think Shaq may have done it. Can't think of any other ones, but I do know there's some that did that. And so, no, Desmond, speaking from you don't have kids, but what do you think about the NBA and the NFL requiring a certain amount of years? Like, you could be dope. You could be the dopest athlete, like where you could, like LeBron, like athletes like him or like Zion. They didn't really necessarily have to go to college or G League or anything like that. Like, how do you feel about that? Like being required, like they tell you you can't come.
I feel differently with basketball and football. With basketball, honestly, it don't make any sense to me. Um, I mean, I know that on some level, maybe the schools want some type of security. Um, I don't know that really. I don't understand the basketball side of it, and I think that it going straight from high school should be fun. Football, I think I kind of like the 3-year rule, just because your body's still maturing, between from being like 18 to 21. I don't know that an 18-year-old should be playing in the NFL, to be honest with you.
I can see that.
So on football, it makes a little bit more sense, the 3-year gap. So, and plus, like you're saying earlier, like the NFL has like an average shelf life of, like, I think the average player stays in the NFL like 3 years.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know necessarily it matters when those 3 years are. With basketball, like most people, as long as they're good enough, they stay in for a decade plus. So I
What
mean,
No, what do you think about, like, so for me, I don't know, you all maybe schooling me on NFL. I know like the NBA, a lot of the contracts are guaranteed and like
right.
you can blow your knee out. And like the guy, Rashard Lewis, 90 million. He still got like I don't know if he ever played again, but like he's guaranteed that $90 million. And in NFL, it's like you have to either be, maybe y'all can break it down to me. How does it work? I don't think all the money is guaranteed in NFL, right?
Yeah, it's not. Definitely not. So your signing bonus is what you're guaranteed. So you sign $100 million contract, your signing bonus is, I don't know, like the number, maybe 40 million, 50 million, something like that. That's your guaranteed money. And the rest is incentive based. Is based on different things, stats, numbers, accomplishments and stuff like that. So yeah, the NFL, they're definitely not paying like the NBA for sure.
So if your son wanted to play, if he was torn, like if he wanted to play football and basketball, knowing that you know that, would you kind of push him away from the NFL?
Mm. I'm gonna be real. Like I wanted my son. He played football 1 year in middle school. I think he did really well. He just wasn't in love with it. I broke it down to him in a way that to make it to the NFL, you have, how can I put it? There's more opportunities for you to play professional football than there are for you to play professional basketball. Um, and that's just the reality of it. So, there's 7 rounds in the NFL draft, and the NBA there's 2. You
Yeah,
might as well call it really like half of one, because
yeah,
if you go outside of probably pick 20, you may not even be on the roster. You may be somewhere in the G League, or you may end up overseas or something like that. So it's really, really tough. So, like, I actually wanted him to play football, but it was just something he didn't want to do. But as far as for the physical side, my wife doesn't. She's like, nah, she
nah,
don't want nothing to
my
do with
baby
that.
ain't
Yeah.
going out there. My baby not going out there. I feel her. I feel her on that. What about you, Desmond? You had a son. If maybe he was good in both NFL and he was good in football and basketball, would you kind of steer him away from football?
That's a great question. Um, I mean, it would depend. It would depend. Just knowing what we know about like head trauma now and what people go through with concussions and all that. I mean, it's hard to advocate on football's behalf. I know that they're trying to make the sport less dangerous, but if I had, a son or that was good enough to go into either the NFL or the NBA, like like they had their pick. I mean, the NBA for sure. I mean, besides the whole like no injuries thing, the guaranteed contracts like you were talking
Yeah.
about before. I mean, you could be John Wall and be sitting on the couch for 2 years and collect like $80 million. I mean, I'm trying to get paid $80 million to watch Netflix.
Yeah,
I'm
me
just saying.
too. No, I feel you on that. But I'm glad you brought the NBA back up because the NBA is 81.1%, according to Wikipedia, 81.1% black. There are 30 NBA teams, but from 2013 to the 2013-2014 season to the 2019-2020 season, the league has averaged less than 9 black NBA coaches and only one major owner, Michael Jordan. Charlotte, shout out to Charlotte, Tony, who owns the Charlotte Hornets. And according to 538.com, 70% of the players in the NFL are black, but there are no black majority owners. How do you feel about this in 2021?
Can I go on this one first?
Mhm.
It's it is a problem, but I don't know that we could probably solve it the way that you'd probably think of the way the question was asked. So, you would think that the way to solve that problem would just be just to give more rich black people a chance to own teams. But then you have to ask yourself the question, how many, black people in America, actually have the money? So the real question is, why are there so few black billionaires in America? Because
Yeah.
you have to be a billionaire to be an owner of these franchises, because that's like written in the thing. It's saying like, you need X amount of money to operate said franchise. So if you don't have X amount of money, you can't operate said franchise. And when you look at like the Forbes list, there are 6 black people in America that have over $1 billion. So obviously, and Michael Jordan's one of them.
Yeah. And
So I
probably
mean, like,
Oprah.
yeah, so she's another one of them. So the pool is small. So the real question is, like, what's it going to take to change the conversation to help, black people like gain the wealth that, you know, I mean, that's a whole separate conversation there.
Oh,
But
we're going there. We're going to go
yeah,
there in a
but
little bit.
yeah, I mean, the real question is, like, what's it going to take to, help the black community get to where they should be, where they're
No,
supposed to be.
no, that's facts. Tony, what you think about that?
Yeah, I think Desmond kind of hit, excuse me, he hit on all of that, man. It's the gap is so big. So, when you look at it, 6 billionaires, I mean, there's not a lot of room, right, for growth in that area, as far as, another one of those 6 people going out and purchasing a franchise. The bigger issue is how to increase that number so that
Mhm.
we can increase our chances. So um, yeah, it's tough, man. It's tough. It's crazy. I'm a part of the city where I live in a city where the only black owner resides. But I mean, it's tough, man, because you look at some of the backgrounds of some of these guys and how they built their wealth and things like that, and it's just crazy. It's crazy. It's so many different ways, you know what I'm saying? But here we are, kind of, put in a box. So yeah, that, like you said, that's a whole nother conversation as
No,
to why it's like that.
I remember Draymond Green. I think he said, dang, I can't quote. I wish I would have looked this up, but it's like a slave and owner mentality. What would you all agree with that? I mean, like someone said that how dare they say that because they're millionaires. Now the billionaires are white, they're the owners, but what would you all do you all see like a slave and master kind of mentality going on with this?
I mean, in football, yeah. I mean, in basketball, it doesn't come across that way because not all these owners really are real public with themselves. Some owners are more visible than others. I mean, I wouldn't label Mark Cuban as being one of those people. Just from all the times I've seen him talk. I mean, he's not the nicest person in the world, but I wouldn't call him that. Football, it definitely feels that way. Especially, I think the thing that drives me crazy is the whole idea of the franchise tag,
Mhm.
where they can just keep you without your consent for indefinitely, and the non-guaranteed contracts and them dragging their feet on making sure that these players have insurance and just not letting them basically express themselves until like the whole like country had to like lose their minds about it until just recently they allowed them to do like spikes in after getting a touchdown or something like that. I mean, the NFL owners seem like they try really hard to put the clamps on everything. It's real like I control this, you do as I say type of thing. Where the NBA, putting Donald Sterling aside, I mean, it feels like there's a lot more of conversations going on there, like a more of an equalness, I guess you would say. That's just the way I see it.
No, I agree with you. And we're gonna take a quick break. And when we come back, we're gonna hear Tony's answer on that. Hey you. Yeah, you, I'm talking to you. Have you checked out the Nice to Meet You podcast? What are you waiting on? Head on over to the Nice to Meet You podcast on IG. That's NICE, 2 is in the number 2, MEET, U is in the letter U podcast. At this podcast, we are all about inspiring one another to become the best version of ourselves, so we truly know who is staring back at us in the mirror. You'll find encouragement, you'll find positivity, you'll find inspiration, motivation. What are you waiting on? Head on over to the IG page. Click the link in the bio so you can follow the podcast. We are found on all major platforms: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Pandora, iHeartRadio, wherever you listen to your podcast. So will you do that for me? If you've been enjoying this content, this amazing episode just right here, what are you waiting for? Head on over and follow the Nice to Meet You podcast. I promise you, you will not be disappointed. All right? I look to see you there. Have a good rest of your day. All right, we're back. So, Tony, what are your thoughts on? Do you feel like the NBA and the NFL has like that slave and like that master and slave mentality?
Yeah, man, it's tough. That's a tough question to kind of answer and like not ruffle some feathers, right? So, in the end of the day, I think,
Ruffle them.
yeah. So definitely with the NFL. Like, unfortunately, like I say, not only in my city do I have the only black owner in the NBA, but then my NFL franchise has been through its share of issues, right? Like we just recently got a new owner a few years back. Of course, our previous owner was all over the news for all kind of stuff from racism to indecent things happening in the workplace to just, and it was crazy. And even as much, I heard that, stories about the stuff that he said to Cam, even though Cam's gone and we get it, but when Cam was here and was winning and was the MVP of the league, and apparently he told Cam some things that he could and couldn't do, and I was just like, man, it's kind of crazy.
Hmm.
Why would it be like that for a guy that is, taking your franchise places that it's never been before? And like I said, it kind of comes back to that, just that I own you, because I think if it was the NBA and we had a, polarizing guy like, a Cam Newton was on a, put Cam Newton in the NBA sense. And, I don't think that same stuff would have been happening. You know what I mean?
I
So
agree.
yeah, I agree with Dez that like the NBA, you don't feel like that, but definitely with the NFL. Definitely with the NFL for sure.
I'm glad you brought that up. It made me think about something. If Kaepernick, if he tried to kneel in the NBA, do you feel like he would have got that same flack? That same, because I feel like he wouldn't have. I don't know, because like I said, I'm not really an NFL person, but I feel like the commissioner of the NBA, I feel like he tries to support, like he tries to put things out there like for social justice and things like that. And like they have like the Martin Luther King games coming up, and I feel like he supports like the black community. And I feel like if Kaepernick had done that in the NBA, the same thing wouldn't have happened to him.
Oh, for sure. Like, I mean, Adam Silver, I think, like, to me, in my opinion, he's like a player's coach.
Hmm.
Like he's for the players, and at least that's what he gives off to everybody. And like I personally like Adam Silver. I like what he does for the NBA. I like the fact that those guys don't have to choose between the color of their skin and standing up and being an individual, or playing basketball versus the NFL where you have to kind of choose. Like, are you going to play football? You got the shield or else. You know what I'm saying? That's how
Yeah.
it is. The NFL seems to protect the shield at all costs. So yeah, I like Adam Silver. I like what he's doing, and hopefully, going forward, these other, like the NFL and stuff like that, they'll gravitate towards a guy like an Adam Silver type, to
Mhm.
to be the leader of their organization.
Well, I feel like it's benefiting them. That I don't know. I mean, I would hope, Tony, that they would, but I feel like it's a benefit to them to keep the people in their place. I don't know, Desmond. How do you feel about it?
I mean, if Cap was in the NBA, for sure it wouldn't have gone down the same way. I mean, just for one, you don't have as many, kind of like, the people who were really mad about it were mostly white, and they were mostly like, like just call it what it is, mostly like, Republican leaning people. And those people don't really watch basketball, for one. They might catch some highlights on Sports Center, but they don't really be, the most they know about LeBron James is when they talk about LeBron James on Fox News.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and speaking of LeBron, I mean, LeBron, was like de facto, I mean, kind of like leader of the NBA. I
Yeah.
mean, I know Chris Paul is the actual like, Players
President.
Association president. But if LeBron comes out and supports something in the NBA, if he were to say like I stand with Cap, or I'll kneel next to Cap, I mean, no one's gonna say anything. I mean, the Milwaukee Bucks, they boycotted a game, last year, in August after Kenosha,
Hmm.
and you would never see that in the NFL. Never. You know how they say never?
No,
Never.
no, I agree with you. I
Yeah.
totally agree with both of you on that. So, Desmond, my news guy,
Mm.
according to Roland Martin, do you know Roland Martin?
Mm.
He's the
No.
host of the News One now. He's like a black host. There's like a black, kind of like black news. He's called News One now.
Yeah.
So according to him, the lifespan of a dollar in the Asian community is 28 days. So Asian community 28 days. In the Jewish community, the lifespan of a dollar is 19 days. But the lifespan of a dollar in the African American community is about 6 hours. 6 hours. But black people in the US spend about 1 trillion a year. With the crazy amount of money black people are spending each year, what do you feel the reason is as to why there is a lack of support of black businesses by black people?
I mean, there's no way I can answer this question quickly.
No, go ahead.
There's so many layers to it. I mean, for one, you have, so many people, living in the community who feel as though like th- we're taught differently. When you are living in a more white community, I'm living in one right now. Like the conversation is around like when you acquire money, it's around like, all right, what are you going to invest in? Like, are you going to invest in a property? Are you going to invest in a business? Are you going to invest in yourself? Like, how are you going to use that money? And so, like, money is thought of more like, as like a tool. But like, I feel like, in the black community, when I was growing up, I mean, it wasn't those same conversations weren't really being had. And I feel like a lot of that, just kind of comes from, there's just really is a lack of just like education on like how to use money in a way to invest in yourself. And there's also, I mean, just going outside of that, there's also financial institutions that for the longest time just don't give black people the same kind of advantages that they give white people.
Yeah.
Can't buy houses in certain neighborhoods, and if you can, they're double triple the rates. Same thing with car loans. So it's just like the de-incentivizing is happening all over the place. And so it's just, I feel as though black people don't have, didn't have the same opportunities that white people had. And so as those you know advantages kind of compound over generations, you kind of just like you pass it on down the line. It's just like, this is what we do when we have money.
Hmm.
Because people in certain communities are used to having money and people in other communities aren't used to having money. And so when
Yeah.
they get money, they're trying to go out and get all the things that they were always wanted to because they didn't have the opportunity to get them before. Versus people in these white communities, they've always had the opportunity. So when they get money, it's not a big deal to go out and buy something because they've already had all those things. Now they want to go buy a business.
Do you feel like, so I'll say that black people, and I agree with you. I think we're not educated in schools, like schools in general. I won't say schools in general. Some schools, like okay, schools in urban areas, I feel like they could do better with having classes to teach financial resources and how to be wise with your money. But we don't really have those classes. And then I feel like that's kind of where we're not taught, and then we live for the now. Like we some of us like we I want the Jordan so I can show off, and I got the flashy stuff so I can show off, but I'm not thinking I'm not always going to be this young. Like I have to prepare myself for later. I'm not always going to be able to work. And would you feel like that plays a part in it? Like we sometimes can't see like further down the line. We can only see what's in front of us.
I think Tony might be able to able to answer this question a little bit better because I think him and I were talking about the role when he came on my podcast recently. We talked about the role that that hip hop music has in our community and
Mhm.
how that kind of like shapes a lot of conversations that especially younger people are having. And I feel like there's a large role that the hip hop culture like plays in spending habits.
Mhm.
Tony, what do you feel about that?
Yeah, man. Like seriously, I was over here like, man,
No,
this is
jump
it right
in.
here. That's the question, like for sure. Like so, when we talk about like generational curses, right? We talk about that a lot in the African American community. Like for me, it was getting married, right? Buying a home, establishing some kind of stability for my children going forward. So that they would know what life should look like when they become adults, right? Um, I think living for now and like trying to be flashy, trying to show off, that's something that we have to break too. Like put that up there with generational curses as well. Because like when I was raised, in the hood, like it was about what do you have? Like you can't say you have money and not show me you have money, right? It's a difference. And it wasn't until I had the opportunity to go to Myers Park High School here in Charlotte, which is like the number one public high school. It's in a pretty ritzy side of town with an average, the median house price over there is probably 600 grand or more. Um, and they sent us like from the hood, from West Charlotte over there. And one thing I noticed right away, kids who, parents had them, living in $1 million homes and stuff like these kids would literally wear the same clothes to school 2, 3 times a week, the same shoes maybe all year. Um, and I started to look at stuff and like, man, like if they have money, why don't they actually, try to get every pair of Jordans? Why don't they, you know, why don't they wear the same, clothes to school? Or why do they wear the same clothes to school multiple times in a week? And it's because, like Dad said, we were raised to look at money differently. It was like you have to show your money. And I think it's up to us now as adults to really, pour into the youth. And that's why I'm so big on youth empowerment, is because you have to let them know, man, like most of the guys that's doing that, they don't really have money. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah,
if
yeah,
you're
yeah.
like if I gotta show you like 5 grand to like make you like me, then that's probably the only 5 grand I have, right? You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? So like, but we're being raised to believe that that's what money looks like. When the reality is, there's a guy right here that's probably been driving the same car for 20 years, and he has millions in the bank
Mhm.
because he looks at money differently. He was raised to look at it differently, and so the hip hop culture does play a lot in that, because these kids will get nowadays, they'll get a couple $1,000s, and their first thought in our community is to go buy some designer. And
Yeah.
so out of $2,000, what are you gonna get like in designer? Like in Louis, you may get one garment, you know what I'm saying, for 2 grand. Now you didn't spend all your money on something that has no resale value, and you didn't invest in anything. You get
Mhm.
what I'm saying? But now people can see you look nice, at least for a second, because it's just one item. But yeah, it's crazy, man. And it's gonna take people, like powerful people in the community, really pouring into the kids to change it. And the parents, people like, myself, yourself, like leaders, and interact with young people, and just changing the way they look at stuff, and like invest in their money. And you know me, I'm all about that, man. That's why I had my daughter start a business.
Yeah.
I would say that I probably somewhat broke the cycle in my family, because my kids aren't materialistic.
Mhm.
Even though their friends see me on the internet and they're like, "Your dad's rich." I'm like, "Nah, dad just still kind of got a problem from high school where he still, like to look too nice at times." But my kids aren't like that. I explain to them that it's not about, that kind of stuff. Like it's about your education. It's about investing your money, making your money make money for you, and stuff like that. So it's just going to take a lot more of those type of conversations within our community to kind of break that cycle.
No, I'm with you because like we do all this complaining and people doing us wrong and stuff like that, but we spend so much money. We get taxes back. You get taxes back once a year. You claim your kids, you get 4 or 5 people that have multiple kids get $5,000. That
Yeah,
is nothing. Like you think
yeah,
like okay, you get 5,000 and that's gonna be gone. You can blow that in one day. Like I feel like we have the mentality that as soon as we get something, we want to put it back. This says 6 hours. Okay, Asian community, 28 days. Jewish community, 19 days. African American community, 6 hours. This is crazy.
Yeah.
yeah. Go ahead, Des. My bad.
Oh no, I'm sorry. And you know what? In those other communities too. I mean, talking about like Jewish community, Asian community. I mean, they think of money differently too. I mean, when you go over to Japan, I mean, you talk to the, people over there about how they view money, how they view wealth. Like, it's serious stuff. Like they don't spend any money frugally, really. I mean, especially, I mean, in certain areas of Japan, they everything about business is very like serious to them. Like how like I mean, from the time that they're like, 6 years old, like they're like being like they're going to school like what 240 days out of the year over in
Yeah.
Japan,
Mhm.
and you have to get into high school the same way you get into colleges over here, where you got to like take tests to get into certain high schools over there, and then I mean it's just and when you eventually get that job, there's a very like set standard of like ways that you're supposed to spend your money. And that's cultural over there. So like just from their culture, they handle money as a conversation just very, very conservatively. You know? There's really no kind of like I guess like flashiness really, like to like that like community. And so it's just like, yeah, it's just the conversations are different depending on the cultures. And I think, acknowledging the fact that the conversation needs to be changed is obviously the first, step, but working on how do we change that conversation. That's definitely what you got to focus on going forward. So I always appreciate, people like Tony who are trying to like get on the
Yeah.
front lines and really talking
Facts.
to people about it. So I mean, I know he was telling me about how he's, telling younger people like how to start businesses. I mean, you need more people like that in the community. So I appreciate what you're doing, Tony.
No, me too.
Oh yeah, for sure, man. I appreciate it, man. It's just It's important, man, because I don't see another way to change it.
Hmm.
Outside of just getting out there. And it's the same for, I hate to compare, I'm not comparing it to civil rights or anything, but if you think about the guys that stood out there and jumped out there to make those changes, some of them lost their lives. They did it at all costs. They didn't care about the consequences. They cared about the future.
Hmm.
And that's what it's going to take. It's going to take guys that care about the future, women that care about the future, for our youth, and that's where it starts. But right now, we're just too busy showing off, man. We're too busy showing off. But I must say, I've seen um, the real estate game start to slowly creep into the African American community
Okay.
and to become something that's looked at as a way out. I've seen people that come from similar backgrounds as myself. That they're immersed in the real estate right now. They're writing books. They're doing things like they're slowly, like I'm slowly starting to see it. It's not a ton of people, but there's people without college degrees that are starting to do things that can change, the future for themselves and their families financially. So we just got to start really, like I say, having those conversations and showing it to them because Black people, we like to see proof, right?
Yeah.
Like I said, if you have money, you can't get like growing up on the block, you can't like you're either broke or you got money, right? And if
Hmm.
you're broke, you ain't got the J's, you ain't got this, you ain't got that, you don't got a car. If you have money, you do have all of those things. So I like to show kids, like,
Hmm.
not necessarily show off, but like when they see me, they'll see that I have X, Y, and Z. And then I like to add context to that, right? And show them like what it took. And it didn't take me doing X, Y, and Z. Like I didn't have to you name it. There's a ton of things, that come up in our community, but I didn't have to do that. And so then you start showing them this is possible. And you can do even more than what I did if you do X, Y, and Z and you look into this and that. And so it's just you got to show them. You got to show them that it's possible. And when you do, then you get their attention and then, you make some progress.
Well, okay. Well, last question though. Made me think about something else. So I'll speak from St. Louis. Sometimes black business, you go in like a chicken joint and you have issues. You have issues where they're not open. They say they open at 11 a.m. They don't open to 12. Or you have a beauty shop, a lady does your hair. She says she's gonna do the appointment at 3. She doesn't show up to 4. So sometimes my issue, and I'm speaking from St. Louis, I don't know if this is a thing everywhere, that sometimes people don't like to support black business because it's a little shady. It's like they need organization. I would think that plays a part in people not putting money back into the black community because sometimes we need to get ourselves organized. What do you guys feel about that?
Was it Des? You got to go ahead. I was gonna say customer service for sure. We got issues. We got issues for sure.
Why you feel like
Um,
that though? Like what is our issue? Why can't we get it together?
yeah, like why can't we put out fires without creating another one?
Hmm.
Burning the whole building down. It's tough, man. Like I have, what is it's a restaurant here called Cuzzo's Cuisine where I did a back to school drive. And I think I told you about this, Lynette,
Yeah.
with my basketball team. Actually, 2 years in a row, did a basketball, back to school drive with them. Super successful in our city. I mean, super successful. They have a food truck. I mean, they've been all over the news around here. I mean, they do work. They're open on time every day, but this is a rare, like,
Yeah.
example of that. You get what I'm
Yeah.
saying? But I
Yeah.
think what happens when you do have great customer service and you do, kind of have that Chick-fil-A mentality and efficiency within your business, then yeah, Black people don't mind spending the money. You know what I'm saying? Like, but unfortunately, I don't know why
Yeah.
we can't separate business and personal because as a businessman, if you come to me with a business problem, something I did, right? Like I said, I was going to ship something to you and it didn't get there, and now you're mad, right? And you have a legitimate reason. Now all of a sudden, I'm looking at you like the person that just cut me off on the road, like on a personal level, and I'm ready to come back at you on some crazy stuff, and I don't realize what I'm doing. I'm ruining my reputation, and it's tough. I don't know how we could fix it right away, man. But it's just something that's ingrained in us, man. That we have to. It's hard for us to separate business and personal. So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Oh, facts, Desmond.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, again, I think this again just comes down to the culture. I mean, in the sense that like for a long time, um, you know, there wasn't really the conversation around, supporting, local businesses, right?
Mhm.
I mean, because I think, like you just looking more like history, once there was more of like an integration that started happening, back in like the 70s, you know, there were certain communities, that just never had access to certain like, brands before. And then once they did, they started like flocking to all of that and stopped supporting as many local businesses. As time goes on, the conversation, the community kind of like leaves a little bit, the whole supporting local businesses thing. But I mean, on top of that, it's just like, yeah, I think, what Tony was saying, if you're a person who is not gonna know to be more like professional about, having a business, well then it's gonna be harder for people to want to take you seriously. And so I feel like that kind of conversations just need to really just be coming up in the community more, just be like, just how you approach having a business. But I think, a lot of that starts with just telling people it's okay to start a business. I mean, I feel like a lot of people don't know, I guess, quote unquote, like how they should run one because it's not a common conversation in the community anymore.
Yeah.
But I feel like as time goes on, it can be more, more common, more normal, and those like standards can be more like adopted as long as it's something that like we constantly are focusing on. I think the community I live in right now, it's a mostly white community, but like um they're very like small business centric.
Okay.
Like everyone in this community is all about supporting businesses that are from this community. Like it's an important thing in this community. And I feel like that should be a staple everywhere.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I don't feel like that should just be like, oh, this little pocket town in Montana. This should be, like wherever your community is. Like I feel like it's a good thing to want to invest in the people in your local community. I feel like that would go a long way as far as starting to something better.
No, I agree. I agree with both of you all. This has been an amazing conversation. I almost don't want it to end, but I want you all. I want to offer some time for you all to just plug your podcast. Just tell people what you have coming up. You don't have to like go into detail, but like give us a snippet of what you got going on. Drop your social media handles and all of that. Whoever can go first, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I can. So you already know it's Mud Talk Podcast. That's on all social media platforms. So Instagram, Twitter. My wife started me at Facebook. I'm not too sweet on there, but like if you're a Facebook person, you can find me at Mud Talk Podcast on Facebook. I recently started a TikTok as well, just trying to do
Oh,
some
get
really
it?
cool like I'm not dancing or anything yet, but I'm doing I've been putting up some basketball tapes and stuff like that, some highlights and some really cool stuff for my son and just kind of, trying to get out there and catch up. But yeah, every Thursday Eastern Standard Time, 10 a.m. You can catch Mud Talk Podcast, new episode, and it's all positivity, man. So you're gonna get on there, you're gonna hopefully get motivated, get inspired. I'm completely transparent about the things I talk about, and I aim to help people. So that's my mission. So yeah, check me out at Mud Talk Podcast.
Cool, Desmond.
Yeah. So, my name is Desmond Price. The podcast is called Independent Thought. You can find it basically anywhere you're looking for it. Apple Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, anywhere you're thinking about. The podcast is mostly about politics. Usually, I'll try to do, my first half of any episodes talking about whatever's going on in the world currently. And then the second half of the podcast, I try to bring a guest on and we'll talk about just about anything. So diversify the content a little bit. But if you're looking for just kind of a different take on what's going on in our world right now, I try to provide that perspective. There should be episodes coming out usually once a week. So, but the best place to keep up with me is on Instagram. I post things in my story daily. Best way to keep up with me and the podcast.
No, you all it's like I said, I connected with people from all over and you are two of my favorite. And so anytime you all want to come back, this has been a great conversation. We could keep going. It's been so good that we could keep going and going and going. But before we leave, because y'all know I like to talk smack about basketball. Before we leave, I want what two teams do you got in the finals? I'll say so. If Kyrie is kind of I don't know what his head where his head is right now, but if KD and Kyrie stay healthy, and Kyrie stops whatever he's doing. I say the Nets and the Lakers, Nets in 7. But if Kyrie or KD, they're not playing for whatever reason, I say Celtics and Lakers in 7. No, Lakers in 6. So Desmond and Tony, either one can go first. Who do you got? NBA Finals, June or July? Who you got?
Tony, you can go first. I need a second on this.
Oh yeah. You already know I've already dropped it, so I did it on my podcast, man. Where the episode I did where I entitled it "The NBA is Back." So I put my predictions out on that one. I already said, so I'm not gonna go back on it. Lakers and Nets. Lakers in 7 is what I chose. But like you, if anything can stop Brooklyn, it's going to be Kyrie Irving.
Yes.
That's my belief. Just because I've seen too much of him. Great player, arguably probably the best ball handler we've ever seen,
Cold.
playmaker.
Mm-hmm.
He's just cold with the things he can do with the basketball. But it's just something in between the ears, I think, with Kyrie that may stop them from getting to where they need to be. Kevin Durant's just uber efficient. Like he's not, you know what I mean? Like I don't care what happens with him. He's going to get a bucket. He's unstoppable. But Kyrie, he may be the downside to that team. He may be what holds them back.
I don't even think, side note real quick, I don't even think this is his last contract. I feel like Kyrie is going to do something strange and just retire. That's my beliefs.
Go to China.
Yeah, I could be wrong, but no, go ahead, Desmond.
I like to look at. I'm a psychology person. I like to look at mentality of people. I think that I like the Heat coming out of the East.
Okay.
Because I feel like Kevin Durant is a champion. I mean he'll bring it with the Nets, but I don't really like the squad around him. I mean I really don't. I don't think that they're not playoff.
Karis LeVert.
Now he's a good talent, but so is Joel Embiid. It's something different when you get in the playoffs.
Okay.
I mean, you got to be more than just talent in the playoffs. You got to know how to like beat. I mean, because like it's one thing to be good in the regular season, right? But you got to be able to beat the best when you're in the playoffs. And I don't know that he hasn't proven that to me yet. LeVert hasn't. Out of the West, it's the Lakers. It's got to be the Lakers. I mean, I want to give the Clippers a chance, but they don't got the players around them, and I don't trust Paul George.
I don't either. Playoff P. Playoff P. But no, thanks guys. And so you all know I can't leave you all without quoting my favorite scripture found in Jeremiah 29 and 11. For I know the thoughts I think towards you, saith the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you an expected end. God's going to bring us to our expected end, you and me. And if you're listening to this on YouTube, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit that bell notification, turn it on. Have an Apple device, head on over to Apple Podcasts. You have an iPhone or iPad, hit that 5th star, drop that dope review. All right. So until next time, nice to meet you. Let's go.